Welcome, everyone, to Living Now, the most current series of Frank and Vivian. I'm Vivian Hermes, along with Shumi
Show me.
and Frank Baird. Hello, Frank, and
Frank.
welcome.
Hello.
And welcome to the month of February. I can't believe we're already this deep into this new year. As we do with most months, we're starting a new topic, and this month's topic is nope, not today. And we're going to be working with anxiety over the course of this month. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank to tell us about anxiety.
Thank you. I was just thinking about a dog voice, since we still have these 5 puppies here, I hardly ever talk in a regular voice anymore. It's always like this. Which I d there's this story, and I agree with it, like, that, it's really nice when you talk to your dog in your dog voice, and nobody else wants to hear your dog voice.
Yeah.
So, uh
Just as I did that with Shumi's thing, it was like, and
So so tonight's topic is why anxiety, why? And, let me tell you why. Hold on one second. Um, okay, I just have to hop from screen to screen. All right. So you've heard me say this often. Attention, whatever you're paying attention to in the present moment is going to be your experience of the present moment. So that's especially important to remember as we talk about anxiety and the effects of anxiety. Um, Anxiety is an emotion, and it's helpful to think of emotions as action urges. They prepare the body to do something, and they're precognitive. They're like, I want to say an early warning system, but they don't have to be warning all the time. But they're precognitive, and one of the things we tend to do by the time it reaches our brain is try to create a story about it. I say try, like, we don't have to try, our brain just starts doing that. And so depending on the emotion, we get different messages about emotions. Some of them we like, some of them we don't like. Some of them are permitted in our family or our community or culture. Some of them aren't. For now, I would suggest that since they're functional in the body, it's really important to pay attention to what the emotions are communicating. So, spending less time thinking about it and certainly less time like judging them and more like paying attention. Why is this here? What is it here to tell me? What is it getting me to pay attention to? What is it configuring my body to get ready to do? Now, to talk about anxiety specifically, it's helpful to think of anxiety as an alert system. So, at its base, it's telling you something changed. So, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, a bad thing, pleasant or unpleasant. Just something has changed, and the action urge is pay attention. So, you pay attention to try to discern what changed or what is happening. Also, it's helpful to be, searching for where is it happening, and then considering what needs to be done. So remember, most of this is precognitive. So most of it is another way of saying that you might use the word like instinctual. So then the first action in this action urge is pay attention. And depending on what you notice in your attention, excuse me, the next action depends on what is happening and where it's happening. So the possible wheres that something can be happening is externally in the world. It can be internally in thinking. It can be internally in feeling, tone, or emotion. And it can be internally in physical sensation. Now, this part is really important because often when people talk about anxiety, we'll talk about like things in the world. Um, More often than not, anxiety is happening related to internal things. So, like a particular thought can show up, and anxiety can either bring that thought or attach to that thought. Or let's say you have some kind of physical sensation, and anxiety can have a lot to say about that physical sensation. So, the where is really important because as we talk about this and we talk about ways of managing anxiety, the negative effects of anxiety, uh, it helps to notice, like, where is this? Because I might do overall thematically, the action is similar, and it's kind of different if it's thinking or if it's a physical sensation or if it's somewhere out in the world. So it's an alert, and at its base, alert in anxiety means, is it dangerous? Is it going to kill me? So if the answer is yes, then the action that you take is what we often call the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. I don't know why we call it a response because it really seems like a reaction, right? So each of these are actions to take. So fight, fight means if it's life or death, fight for your life. But even more than that, fight means, going to meeting the thing, addressing the thing, right? It's going toward it. Flight is going away from it. So that might be running away. Freeze is still an action. Sometimes people don't think of it as an action because it's like, be still. But freeze is an action. And where it comes from is this notion of, like you might see it with rabbits, for example, that freezing, depending, um, well, I'll use animals as the example here, but like when a rabbit freezes, it's harder for a bird of prey to see it because the way birds' eyes are, they notice things that are moving. So if the rabbit is still, it's really harder for the bird to see it. So the freeze reaction is another really great way to be safe in the presence of certain kind of danger. And then fawning behavior is the kind of behavior where, I think of it as like trying to curry favor. It's like, "Don't eat me because because you like me." This is, um fawning behavior might be something like, when a dog, sort of lowers itself into a more submissive uh, posture or rolls over, right? It's telling you, "I'm not a threat." So in the terms of danger and life and death, it's like, "I'm not a threat, don't kill me." And then the way anxiety operates when it's functional anxiety is that when the danger is gone, the alert dissipates. It's not needed anymore. Right? So the anxiety would show up, it would prompt you to pay attention. You pay attention depending on what danger is present. You have the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn reaction. The danger goes away, the danger is over, and then anxiety dissipates because it's not needed anymore. Now, if earlier in this sequence, you're paying attention and you determine that whatever's happening isn't dangerous. For example, it was just a change. Um, I'm sort of going maybe unexpected. I think in some ways, anxiety is a part of functional anxiety is a part of everything. But if there wasn't danger that I noticed, then the alert dissipates. Right? That's one of those things where I think in horror movies, right, there's that sound down the hall. And in real life, because real life isn't a horror movie, in real life, you turn your head, you pay attention, and you go, "Oh, that was the cat. It's not that murderer from Scream." So it's helpful to make a distinction between functional and dysfunctional anxiety because part of what you want to do is discern whether or not you need to pay attention to the alert that anxiety is sending you. So functional anxiety, it narrows the focus so that you can scan the stimuli, the environment and the stimuli to determine the appropriate action. right? Again, it dissipates after the action has occurred. So it narrows the focus. It's like if you're in a dark room, you have a flashlight, it's shining the light. And if there's something dangerous, then it's focused on the danger and how to be safe, how to get safe. And if there isn't a danger, you focus it around the room. And then I guess in this metaphor, you turn the flashlight off because you don't need it anymore. Though I know for some people, turning off the flashlight in a dark room, even metaphorically, can be a little anxiety inducing. Now, dysfunctional anxiety, and sometimes dysfunctional anxiety, uh, like I think everybody has an experience with dysfunctional anxiety. Um, but really bad dysfunctional anxiety can become what's called an anxiety disorder. What dysfunctional anxiety does is it widens the focus of attention, and then you focus on the chaos that it has brought into view, right? So rather than narrowing it, it widens the focus of attention. And, if anxiety was sitting next to you talking, it would be going, and what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And everything it's asking about is unpleasant and horrifying. So it's really chaotic, and what it does is it gets us to spin around. We'll talk, I think, in 2 weeks about anxiety loops, but this is how it gets you into an anxiety loop because you just keep thinking about things, and often we think with dysfunctional anxiety, we're thinking through something, we're problem solving, and the thing about a distinction between dysfunctional and functional anxiety would be that if you were problem solving, if you were thinking through something, eventually you'd get to a place where the anxiety would dissipate because you solved the problem or you figured the thing out, or you figured out that you're not going to figure things out and it's okay at the moment. But dysfunctional anxiety will always keep you worried about more, and there is never a place you can rest, and it tends to only dissipate because of exhaustion. Like, our body can't maintain a heightened state of alert, so eventually the anxiety dissipates because of exhaustion or through distraction or refocus of attention. So the distraction or refocus of attention is the skill. Exhaustion, I guess you could say exhaustion is a skill, but I can never get tired on purpose. Well, I guess I could, but it takes like all day to do that. So exhaustion is the way that dysfunctional anxiety dissipates because it has to, because your body can't keep doing it. But distraction and refocusing of attention is a valuable skill to have. And that's what we'll be talking about tonight. So, in today's practice, what we're going to do is engage and disengage attention. And some of you have heard me say this before. Different ways of talking about is distracting or redirecting attention. So, because we're practicing, we're not going to practice with anxious thoughts. We don't need to well, we do need to practice with anxious thoughts, but we have plenty of anxious thoughts. So we're practicing all the damn time around anxiety. What we're going to do is focus on something pleasant for 2 reasons. One, because it's not anxiety. The other thing is this, one of the things we often don't appreciate is that the practice is the same whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. The practice is, where's my attention? And if it's where I want it to be or need it to be, great, carry on. And if it's anywhere else, depending, then the skill is where's my attention? If it doesn't need to be there or it's not productive for it to be there, can I disengage and redirect my attention? So sometimes people will call that distracting. So if you have like anxious thinking going on, dysfunctional anxious thinking, distract yourself from the anxious thinking. I tend to prefer redirecting focus of attention and engaging in something because then linguistically, distracting is still in reference to the thing you're trying to distract yourself from. Redirecting the focus of attention allows you, at least linguistically, to forget about the thing that was bothering you because all that is indicated in redirecting or focusing attention is where do I want it to be? Where's it going to go? Where is it now? So, engaging and disengaging attention or distracting and redirecting a focus. Here's what we're going to do in today's practice. We're going to do this sequentially. I'm going to invite you to focus on a pleasant physical sensation. And then, in these practices, often we're going, bring your attention back to today. We're going to have two things. We're going to have the meditation or attention anchor. I'm going to invite you to use breathing today. It doesn't have to be breathing, it can be something else, but I'll mention breathing as the place to return attention. And then we're going to focus it on purpose to this thing that's pleasant. Let our attention linger there for a while. And then on purpose, we're going to disengage and redirect our attention. Now, here's the part that uh, the value in practicing with something pleasant. If it's unpleasant, we're ready. It's like, let me out of here. Let me put my attention anywhere else. With something pleasant, we can linger there for a long time. And there's a difference between I'm lingering here because I'm mindfully enjoying this, or I'm lingering here because it turns out this is like an avoidance mechanism. So I think, particularly with, what people call these days doom scrolling, where you're checking social media or TikTok, and you're just doing the thumb exercise for hours, right? So if you're experiencing it as pleasant, and I mostly do, then it's really easy to stay there, stay focused, and forget that there are other things that can be done or need to be done, or even this notion of all things in moderation. Like maybe 2 hours of TikTok, are a bit excessive, and maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes might be the right dose. So, we're gonna focus on a pleasant sensation, hang out for a while. I'll be providing some instructions, inviting you to move your attention around to it or to something else. Then we'll shift the focus of attention. Again, breathing will still be the anchor, but the new practice target will be a pleasant feeling, tone, or emotion. And now this can be tricky sometimes because sometimes it's like I'm not feeling an emotion. Um, for this practice, I would encourage you to think of something like contentment as an emotion, satisfaction as an emotion, right? So often when I'm feeling content or satisfied, I'm sort of experiencing that as neutral because it's not like exciting, and it's also not unpleasant. So it's really kind of easy to take it for granted. So even if you notice that, when you get the invitation to notice a pleasant feeling, tone, or emotion, if you can't find something, that's okay. Let your attention linger around the attention anchor. Oh, and I should say, so an emotion would be something like happy, sad, content, angry. The feeling tone is overall, it's pleasant or unpleasant. Mm. So sometimes I might be like, let's say in this particular part of the practice, I might be focusing on overall, my experience of this moment is pleasant. And then I'd keep bringing it back to overall, my experience in this moment is pleasant. I may or may not be using those words in my head, um, but that's the focus. And in the last part, we will transition to focusing on a thought. I forgot to write pleasant there, but it's a pleasant thought. So this could be a pleasant remembering, a pleasant imagining, um, and then we'll use that thought, that pleasant thought or thinking, right? There might be multiple thoughts that show up. We're going to use that for part of the practice. So, with that said, let's practice make yourself comfortable. You can do this practice in stillness or slow, deliberate movement. Your eyes can be open or closed. Listen to my voice. I will be providing some guidance. As best you can, establish a friendly, gentle attitude toward whatever's happening. Because to the extent that you can have a friendly, gentle attitude, it increases the chances or it cultivates the conditions where observing is possible rather than, say, reacting to what's going on. And reacting could be, "Ooh, I really like this," or "I really don't like this," right? But with a friendly, gentle attitude, it cultivates the conditions where I can be more observational and less reactionary. So then notice what's happening. That is really the goal of all the practices. Notice what's happening. You might be noticing something different with a different practice. Keep noticing what's happening. And as always, stop if you need to. So, with that said, let's practice. So, you might start by bringing attention to the body, noticing what state the body is in. And you might notice if there is tension or tightness in the body. And if there is, you might try to let go of as much of that as you can. We often have tension or tightness from something earlier in the day, and that's not needed right now. Or we might have tension or tightness in anticipation of something later in the day, and that's not happening yet. So letting go of any tension or tightness that you can. I often invite or encourage stillness if I'm sitting or standing or lying down to practice. And if I'm moving, I want to encourage slowness, deliberateness, stillness and slowness gives you a chance to observe some things that otherwise you might not notice because life is fast. And then you might feel how the body is breathing, how it's breathing on its own. You don't have to make the body breathe. You don't have to breathe in any particular way for this practice. Bring attention to breathing and just feel it happening. You can use breathing as an attention anchor, a place to focus attention, place to refocus attention, a place to restart the intention of paying attention. So, whenever attention wanders off or gets lost, gets pulled away, when you notice, gently bring attention back to breathing. So, breathing, the felt sense of breathing, will be your attention anchor for this practice. But now, if you will, move your attention to some pleasant sensation, any pleasant sensation anywhere in the body. And if it helps, you can create one. You can create one by petting yourself, hugging yourself. If there's a particularly soft material nearby, you might touch it. Whatever it is, finding a pleasant sensation and let your attention linger here on this pleasant sensation. Sometimes it helps to be really curious about the sensation, what constitutes it. So, is it soft or hard? Is it warm or cool? Does it have sharp edges or round edges? And where in the body is the sensation happening? Is it happening in the fingertips? Is it happening in the bottoms of the feet, the back, the chest, somewhere else in the body? Sometimes it's nice to name the sensation as pleasant. So you can give it a name like soft or cool, or I sometimes like just pleasant. This is a pleasant sensation. And now, on purpose, move your attention to the attention anchor, back to breathing, back to feeling breathing happening. And if you notice any of your attention wandering back to that pleasant sensation, that's okay. Bring attention back to breathing. Let breathing be at the forefront of your attention, the primary focus of your attention. You may still be aware of the pleasant sensations happening. The practice for now is to have the primary focus on feeling breathing happening. And with an attention anchor, if attention wanders off or gets pulled away, gently bring it back to breathing. Now, on purpose, shift attention to a pleasant feeling tone or emotion. Feeling tone would be something like, in this moment, overall, it feels pleasant or unpleasant, or an emotion like happy, content, pleasant feeling tone or emotion. And if you find one, let attention linger there. And if you aren't noticing, you can always practice with attention on the attention anchor, feeling, breathing, happening. Whenever you're focusing on something on purpose, it's helpful to be as curious as possible about what's constituting the experience. So, with an emotion, it might be where in the body is it happening? And the feeling tone might be overall, this is really pleasant, and my body in general feels at ease. And then on purpose, redirecting attention back to breathing, back to feeling, breathing happen. Again, you may be aware of the feeling tone or the emotions. Have the primary focus of attention be on breathing for now. Feeling, breathing happening. Feeling the rise and the fall of the chest. Or feeling the movement of air in through the nostrils or mouth, and then back out through the nostrils or mouth. And if attention wanders off or gets pulled away, gently bring it back to breathing. So now, on purpose, shift attention to a pleasant thought. It might be a pleasant memory, a pleasant imagining. It might be in motion. It might be a still image in mind. Some people see images, some people hear, some people feel. Focusing attention on a pleasant thought. Again, curiosity about our experience can help us focus attention. Curiosity moves us toward something. So you might be noticing how this pleasant thought is being experienced. Is it an image? Is it sound? Is it still? Is it moving? Is it one scene or is it a variety of scenes or perspectives? Is the thinking that's happening fast or slow, loud or quiet? And then, on purpose again, bringing attention back to breathing. One way of languaging this might be letting go of the thoughts, bringing attention back to breathing. If the thoughts keep happening, or if any kind of thinking is happening, let it be in the background with a focus of attention on breathing. Just breathing. Now shifting attention again. This time it's your choice. Shift attention to either a pleasant sensation or a pleasant feeling tone or emotion or a pleasant thought. your choice, and focus on that pleasant. Feel into or sense into that pleasant. And let your attention linger there. And now, on purpose, bring attention to breathing, feeling breathing happening. On purpose again, shift attention either to the pleasant thing you were just focusing on, or if that has changed or passed, anything, a sensation, emotion, or thought that's pleasant. Shift attention back to the pleasant. And now shift attention back to breathing just because you decided to. Feeling, breathing happening. And if attention wanders off or gets pulled away, gently bring it back to breathing. To conclude our practice for this evening, if you like, you might express some appreciation to yourself for practice, or sometimes some people like to express appreciation for the pleasant that they were focusing on or working with. I'll sometimes say, thank you for the softness, or thank you for the happiness. And for the practice, if you want to at least thank yourself for the practice, for making this effort. And then if your eyes are closed, you might open them. If you've been sitting still or lying or standing, you might stretch, wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, yawn. And this will conclude our practice for tonight. Thank you for your practice. We now have time for questions, answers, explorations. All you have to do is type them into the chat. I'm especially curious about what it was like to practice with something pleasant and maybe even what you practiced with. And while you're doing that, next week, this month is nope, not today anxiety, but next week is name it to tame it, managing overwhelm, which seems like that's going to be some valuable skills to have too. So thank you. I'll stop sharing that screen.
Thank you, Frank. And I really appreciated the fact that you put the dysfunctional anxiety into perspective because I don't know if I ever thought of it that way as that it being kind of a normal thing going haywire.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so much of our body that we get mad at and ourselves. And part of that is because it's inconvenient, right? Sometimes emotions are really inconvenient. Um, uh, and
And
they're
unpleasant.
yeah, and they serve a function. So what would be nice is if we could pay attention to them, listen to them, and then make decisions about what to do next. I mean, when there's time. Again, in danger, usually it's like instinct. Um, uh, but most of us aren't in danger regularly. Some of us are, but most of us aren't in danger, but we experience anxiety so much. So,
So somebody is mentioning that they felt like last week with the zooming in and zooming out, both exercise shifting focus. You want to kind of frame it for everyone?
but, what we did last week?
Well, how
Or
there were because the person is commenting that they felt it was similar.
yeah, because, it's about, um, changing your perspective, right? So your perspective can be changed by zooming in, getting really close to something. Your perspective can be changed by backing up and having a really wide view of something. And your perspective can be changed by moving it from one location to another. So you could have like a narrow focus and widen it, and then a narrow focus, or you could have a narrow focus, shift that narrow focus off in a different direction onto something else. Um, so they're all related to where is my attention and what's the quality of my attention. And then again, if it's where you want it to be, great, carry on. And if it's not, if you're supposed to be working and you're having trouble because you're daydreaming, right? It's a way to bring attention back to the work. Or sometimes it's like you're working and you're daydreaming, and that's your body and mind telling you it's time for a break. So, what's happening? Listen to it and then take action. And focusing, refocusing, widening or narrowing focus. There are so many places you could go.
Mhm. And that's what we're gonna explore, I think, over the course of the month. What can you do with this? Because at the end of the day, you know, it is a pithy saying to say you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. But this is what it's referring to, right? This is what it's pointing at is that it's we get to decide our response. That is something that we can control.
Yeah.
This takes practice.
Yeah, lots of that's a key thing, right? Because sometimes the way, influencers and motivational speakers describe it, it's like, "Just do this." And I say if we could just do that, everybody would be doing that regularly because there's a benefit. So, lots and lots of practice, though, to really strengthen your ability to place and sustain your attention where you want it to be. And really, part of the practice is becoming more familiar with the process of existence, right? This is the process of what's going on. My attention goes somewhere, and then I'm having an experience of whatever it is that I focused my attention on. And a lot of times we're not paying attention to how that operates. So you pay attention to that, you learn that, and then you have so much more influence in your own life. I always want to say influence because I go, good luck with control.
I
I mean,
mean,
it really is some control, but
this is this you can speak in I think you can speak in terms of controlling over time.
yeah,
The other piece is that the practice requires you to give yourself a lot of grace, because if you think about how hard it is to steer the ship in another direction when you have momentum and habit and all of that going in one direction, how hard it is to steer in another way. But you have choice. And you might catch yourself after the fact, or you might catch yourself you're like, "Oh, that wasn't the most skillful thing." Like, "Oh, okay, I did distract myself from my anxiety, but I ate a whole bag of chips or whatever." Not to judge yourself over it and stuff. It is a process. It isn't like you're gonna flip the switch and you're gonna choose better every single time in the same way.
yeah. I think about we're all the result of our conditioning, and conditioning has momentum. And so to shift that conditioning takes a lot of practice, effort, a lot of like counter iterations.
Yes.
Um, and I think of the difference between a reaction and a response is that choice. That a reaction is just what I'm well, like how my cells are designed, or
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, it's conditioning.
What
And
I know to do.
yeah, yeah. And mindfulness gives me the awareness, which then gives me the choice. And then the practice gives me the ability to execute my choice.
And
Because
what
I
you
think
choose might be your what you know to do. That
yeah.
might be the most skillful thing.
Well, and then I think, right, so I think of that like when people talk about, trusting their gut feeling,
Mhm.
I think of it like, lots of people are looking for work these days, because the economy, and other things. Uh, and so, sometimes, like, you really want and need a job, and then you're interviewing with somebody, and your gut feeling is telling you this is, like, kinda off, right? And a lot of us go, "Well, that's inconvenient because I really want or need a job, so let me just, like, stifle that." And then you get the job, and then it's like, "Oh," I mean, sometimes, sometimes you're wrong. But you won't know if you're right or wrong unless you pay attention. And if it's, as they say these days, giving you bad vibes, really, it's helpful to pay attention to that. And it could be something like, I'm feeling uncomfortable because this person reminds me of somebody I had a bad experience with. Right. But again, by being mindful, then you have a choice about how you're going to relate to that. Without mindfulness, it's like, I just This feels bad, I'm out. But sometimes it's like, I think they remind me of somebody, but they're also doing something that I don't want or need in my life right now.
So I was gonna say the gut, you're bringing up a thing that I've been kind of touching into a lot, but it has more serotonin receptors than even your brain. So there is something as far as emotion, like reading, and if the majority of communication is nonverbal, you you gotta go with it. And I was actually in the comment section of a YouTube video where it was a CIA agent that was being interviewed, and he'd written a book, and he was talking about how you have to sometimes override your gut instinct, and the entire majority of the comments were like, "What are you talking about? My gut instincts got me through war. My gut instincts got me, you know, made me avoid all sorts of horrible situations, like in really kind of extreme situations." So I'd say gut is pretty good. But yeah,
Well
there's other considerations that might override, like a paycheck.
and discernment is the important part of that, right? Because I could be my gut could tell me this has lots of reminders of something else. And the discernment is how much of that is present, how much of that is history affecting the present, how much of that is, like, particularly relevant, right? But that's the discernment, and discernment is exploring what's going on, but to do that, I have to pay attention to what's going on,
Mhm.
whether it's convenient or not.
Yeah.
So we're gonna need to stop for today. Uh, Thank you all for being here today to practice with anxiety around pleasant things. Um, really, you'll have it's the same practice that this week, if you find yourself, and you will, uh, your attention is dwelling on something that's unpleasant or anxiety provoking or encouraging or supporting, then try to practice, see what it's like. And we'll see you next week. Vivian will be guiding us next week on naming it to tame it. I'm
Thank you
ready.
all.
I'm ready to name it. I've got
Yeah,
all
I don't know
kinds of
about
names
taming
for it.
it,
Right, that's where you're just yelling names because you can't make it behave.
right?
All right. Thank you all.
Thank
We'll
you all.
see you next time.